I grew up in central Rochdale area. This is the Warderworth area. And as you will be aware, as you will know, this area is a predominantly Asian area. And there are a lot of the communities that live in here, you had Pakistani, Kashmiri, white communities living in this area. I was born in 1977. My schooling over here was mainly growing up around different communities. So my friends included white people, young people, people from the Polish community, and majority of the Kashmiri community as well. I think every young child that's grown up in Warderworth has gone to Haybrook Primary School sometime during their lifetimes. So the school was a significant thing for us. The nursery that we had was on South Street. The South Street nursery, my nickname at the school, at nursery, used to be Buck Rogers, yeah, at that time. So my teacher, Mrs. King, I still remember her, bless her, used to call me Buck Rogers. So nursery, schooling, the local mosque that was on South Street, we'd go there in the evenings to do our prayers, learn Arabic, and that's some of the stuff that we used to do over there. And at the same time, for us, playing was the play areas that we had. So we had a local park that we'd all assemble around, and we had good old traditional games, you know, like Pittu Garam, Gulli Danda, yeah. And these were games that were brought from back home. At the back, we were lucky at our house, we used to have a kick pitch. So we could play football, we could do hide and seek, we could do activities. There used to be a factory at the back of our house. It was a derelict factory, yeah. So for us, during the day, we'd all used to just climb in there and just stay warm, yeah. Sit there and just put little fires on, and just sit there with everyone, each other, and just relax and spend a day together and just say, right, you know what, yes, we've got through the day. We lived in communities where everyone knew each other, yeah. So the other thing was, we didn't want to bring any shame, or we didn't want to bring any embarrassment to the family name, etc. So we always wanted to keep that reputation and respect for our parents and our elders. Our music teacher was called Mrs. Hope, yeah, and basically she had hope in us, yeah. And yeah, you know, so I remember when we used to go to Champness Hall and recite Kumbaya, My Lord, and various other songs, and sing, and it was like, right, you know, I being in the class of, out of that class there used to be probably about 20 white people in the class, and there was 2 of us Asians. Probably we stood out like sore thumbs, yeah. But you know, we were sat at the back, you know, like, and they were thinking, what are they reciting, what are they doing? But we were like high pitched, but we learnt everything, yeah. So for us it was like, right, yeah, we'll try a bit of music, you know. We weren't afraid to try different things, and we did it. Growing up at that time, all the kids that we had around us, or the friends that we had around us, we all spoke Bahari Kashmiri language, yeah. So it was easy for us, yeah. So we'd communicate. When we were at school, we'd have friends from the Pakistani community as well. Now, because we were in the majority as Kashmiris, yeah, they started learning our language, yeah, and they used to say Mwari Twari. Having that at school and being in the majority, I think we got on with each other, yeah. When we went out into masjids taught us Urdu, yeah. So we were taught Urdu by the Pahari speaking teacher, yeah. So that was even hard because, one, we didn't communicate with them, or the English never knew. So the mosque's teaching us Urdu. At home we're trying to speak Pahari. School we're doing English, yeah. So it was a constant thing. But as you grew up and you realised that, right, okay, school and college, you got different friends, you got different communities, and that's how it was. When we were growing up and learning about the language of Urdu or Kashmiri or Pahari, when we were at high school, my Urdu teacher, I remember, Mrs. Dada, yeah, at Failings Park High School, yeah, we used to do poetry. Now we were Kashmiri young people reciting poetry, yeah. So for us, it became like, hang on a minute, you know, don't you know any words in your own language? But because we were at mosque learning Urdu as well, and our teacher was teaching us, so we were able to adapt and speak the other languages as well. So it's just been a balance of, right, you know, whichever cap fits. So when we needed to be British, we'd put our British cap, we'd switch on. And when we went to an event in the mosque, we were Kashmiris, yeah. When we went to other activities together, we just said we're Muslim, yeah. So you had to switch between those, and it's not easy. growing up in the 80s. You had people like Cliff Richard. Um, you were listening to Bob Marley. You were listening to people of that era. Yeah, Top of the Pops used to come on. We used to listen to that. Yeah, these programs that used to come on. The clothes that we used to wear were a lot of baggy and flare. Our hair was very, very long. We'd always hear about our elders, that Elvis Presley and rock and roll and the Beatles and everything else, and used to think, no, what these guys on about, what they're doing. Fashion for us, for me, I was the only child in my primary school that used to wear Roland Rat glasses. Yeah, so when I had glasses, at the corner of my glasses, I used to have Roland Rat on my glasses. So you can understand that wearing glasses at that time was not fashionable. Yeah, but it was seen as, right, hang on a minute, why is he wearing glasses? Can he not see a thing? Clothes itself, we used to have Tommy, Cannon and Ball. I actually used to wear braces. Yeah, so with my trousers I had braces up, and I was probably about 9 or 10. Yeah, but for me, we used to watch them on TV. So people that we had on TV or things that we used to see, we'd follow them as well. But we used to have the Rochdale Carnival on every Sundays in the 80s. Yeah, so along Entwistle Road, we used to have floats of carnival designed boats and vans that would go along. So you'd have fairy queens going along dressed up. You'd have people with face painting on. You'd have music drumming along. Yeah, you'd have all the festive stuff that they used to have. On a Sunday, we knew that because the town centre, we could hear the drums all the way from Entwistle Road. So we knew on Sundays and yearly when the carnival was going on, the preparations were being done in the morning, the roads were getting shut down. And when the carnival was on, all of our friends would just go running to the bus stop, stand outside there, and we'd clap along and wave to the Queen and say, right, hi, how you doing, or whichever. And to us, we used to get like free balloons thrown and sweets and stuff like that on the floor. And for us, that was like, wow, you know what I mean? These people have come into our town. What are they doing? How things are? There used to be the Rochdale Melas, yeah? The Rochdale Melas that used to take place in Broadfield Park. And these were bringing people from different backgrounds and communities together, talking about bringing people. So it's about sharing different foods, sharing different music, having traditional people that were doing bhangra, to people that were doing dancing, people that were playing sports games and activities. So that used to be good. We used to go to Broadfield Park and take part in festivities over there as well. And Eid, well, that's it. It's just an excuse to go and eat, innit? Yes, it's your family, your friends. Yeah. When we were young, our grandparents, they used to give us money, pocket money, and them days, pocket money was £1. Yeah. So if you got £1, like, you were the king. Yeah, or queen. Yeah. So we would really look forward to Eid. My first job, I used to be a paper boy. My wages for a week was £1.17 a week on a Friday. £1.17. I used to get a brown paper packet. I used to post. I used to work for Chadwick's on Ramsey Street, doing the newspaper round. Yeah, and I used to post them on Whitworth Road. Yeah, and they knew me as a paper boy then when I used to go around. And I hated the houses where the dogs were in. Yeah, right. I used to just chuck the newspaper there. Yeah? You just whack it in there, and you just get little pit bulls, or you'll get little puppies walking, whatever it was. Yeah, and I was like, right, yeah, there's your newspaper today. Yeah, and then I used to get a complaint, Sheraz. Yeah, Folly Walk, they've been on the phone again, the paper's chewed up, yeah, dogs had it, yeah, right? But, you had to do these things, and that was us, with £1 a week, £1.17 a week, I used to go to the local shop, Arif's, on Ramsey Street, yeah, and we used to get 10p Lucky Bags. And out of them 10p Lucky Bags, we used to get cola bottles. And we just chewed the cola bottles for 2 days, yeah, like have one, put it back in again, yeah, have another one. And that was it. And then obviously later on in life, when I got my first job in Morrison's, it was probably like £3 an hour. Yeah, but you had to do these things. You had to work. You just couldn't rely upon them, because you're realizing that your parents are getting older. You don't want them to work. You want to earn a bit of income. You get into college. You need to get a job. You need to buy things. You want to do things. Your first bike, your first skateboard, your first Sony Walkman. We used to walk around with Sony Walkmans, yeah, plugged into our ears, and that was it, you know. But we'd have Bhangra songs in there, yeah, or we'd have English music going on in there, you know. So that was it. Racism, I would say yes, in the 80s, where we used to hear about the NF, the British National Party, or they're going to come on Sundays. At 6 o'clock, everybody used to go home. We used to get scared, or we used to say, you know what, the English are coming, the National Front are coming. So we used to hide in our cellars, yeah, and we used to hear where people used to walk along the street. We used to think they were English people. In them days, the people used to wear Doc Martens, yeah, so they were big black boots, yeah. So you'd associate them with skinheads, yeah, right. So the word will go out in the street during the day that, right, skinheads are coming tonight, you know, National NF are coming, NF are coming, yeah. So you were like, you know, our big brothers, our elders, they'd say stuff to us, and we'd think about it, and we'd say, right, what's going on? So these were the sort of things that we used to hear, and we had experienced ourselves. And I clearly remember in our cellars, because it used to be, we used to have the light off, and we could just about hear our own breath, because that's how scared we were in the cellars waiting. And when people were just walking along and thudding along, and you're thinking, was that an NF? Was that a skinhead? Yeah, and that was it. Compared that to now, yeah, it's, you know, sadly, post 9/11, 7/7, we've had these terrible attacks around Islamophobia and racism. Last year, we've just experienced the attacks in Manchester, when we had the Manchester attack in the arena. So it brings it close to home. You know, years ago, you'd hear about these things in different countries. This has happened over here, that's happened over there. You know, now when you're living here, you're thinking, you know, when you walk out the door, is it safe? What's going to happen? You know, you know, us guys, you go to Trafford Centre, you go to shopping places, you go to places where it's crowded, it's congested, but you don't think in the back of your head that, right, you know, when we were there, that something's going to happen. Nowadays, if you go to these places, you're thinking crowd and security and fear. So it's created that sort of fear and panic amongst people, that be careful where you're going. You know, if you're sitting on a tram, if the person's going to be abusive to you, you've seen many cases this on social media now, you know, since last year, since the Grenfell Towers, since the Manchester Arena attacks, everything, there has certainly been an increase on attacks of people of Muslim origin. You know, we live in an era now where Islamophobia exists, where young Muslims or British Muslims, elderly people, they're fearful of their lives, or they're fearful of catching a bus, or wearing a hijab, or being seen sat on a train with strangers, or walking on their own in unlit areas. So these are sadly the occasions and the times that we live in now. Racism in the 60s and 70s was spoken, was in your face, everything else as well, yeah, but it wasn't as bad as what it is now. Now the form of discrimination and racism that people are facing, you know, you say for an example on social media, on Facebook, people just can shout out to you. If you put a comment up, you'll get 50 hate comments in minutes, because they might disagree with your comments, or because that person, he or she, might not interact with you, but because they've got the power of typing away, they can just easily send horrid messages to you, and this is what's happened now, that the tolerance levels have decreased. Growing up, my identity was Pakistani, because that's what we knew, that's the language we had, even though knowing that we spoke Kashmiri and Pahari at home, but it wasn't accepted outside. Because there was no identity, there was nowhere people to go. The only place we had was KYP, which was Kashmir Youth Project. So that was the only place that we'd connect with the Kashmiri community. Yeah. So when we'd go to the local youth club, or we'd go to the local area, that was the only connection that we had, where we thought, you know what, all the Kashmiris come here, so they can speak here. Understanding the sacrifices that your grandparents have made, or your parents have made, in understanding that what they gave, what they did. They spent the 15, 16 hours a day going to factories and doing all the work and giving back to the families. Nowadays, young people, you know, both sets of family are working very hard. So mother and father nowadays are working hard, because you got to pay bills, you got to pay mortgages. You know, grandparents now, they came with that dream of, we will go back to our land. We will go back, we will live there one day. You know, and our grandparents used to say to us, one day they'll kick you out of your country. Wait for that day, they'll come. Yeah. But you know, these stories we heard from our elders. Nowadays, a lot of people are not going back. When the Asian community or there's a death in the Muslim community, they're burying their loved ones here now. The roles have reversed. 90% of people now bury their loved ones in Rochdale. Yeah, because they don't want to go back, because they won't be going back. They'd rather have them buried here so that they can go and do their daily prayers or once a week and do something here, right? You know, why take somebody back when you're not going to go back there yourself? I think it's very important that the third and fourth generation understand and recognise where their roots and their backgrounds are from. Yes, you can be born here in Rochdale, have your birth, well, nowadays nobody's born in Rochdale, but Oldham, but it's your identity, it's your who you are, you know, because at the end of the day, sadly, the colour of the skin gets used as discrimination or as a forms of prejudice. My identity as a British Kashmiri, I know who I am as a person, where my identity belongs, so I'm proud of the heritage that I have as a British Muslim Kashmiri living in Rochdale. And I'm not afraid to say it, you know, because at the end of the day, my parents come from that village. That's how they were, that's who they are. At the end of the day, we're all products of our parents, and we're grateful for the sacrifices that they've given. And if they never gave us that opportunity, we would not be able to express ourselves. So when we go to meetings now, I think Rochdale Council is the only council in the country that recognises Kashmiris as a separate identity. Yeah. If you look at on their forms, you have like British, Arab, Muslim, whichever, the Bangladeshi, Pakistani, they've actually got a box that says Kashmiri on it. Yeah, you know. So for them, it's taken time for the Rochdale Council to recognise, and we appreciate that. But, you know, because a lot of the time, the people don't understand, parents were struggling. When they go to doctors, they ask for an Urdu translator. An Urdu translator, the elderly person, mother, father, they cannot communicate in Pahari language, so they don't understand. So these are some of the barriers that they've had to face and understand, and it still exists, sadly. You know, in some places where we've had experiences of where two Asian ladies have gone with the same surname, yeah, of Begum, yeah, and just because they heard the word name Begum, yeah, they both got up to go for the appointment, yeah. Now, cultural awareness, understanding, organisations need to understand that the people have got a different language, they have got a different way of living. Yes, we live in the UK, we're affluent, we've got changes, we can speak the language, but we're proud of who we are and what our heritage is, and we should never forget that.